You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
Yes, you are. And we are the hosts for this show. And so, once again, of course, it seems like I always have to start these things by apologizing for the fact that we weren't on at some point. I mean, our whole schedule has become so sporadic lately, and it's really not our fault. We're trying to keep this up, but both of us, well, for you, it's the end of the year for the school stuff, and, for me, it's just production stuff.
No, the office.
Yes. But you guys didn't come to hear that. You came to talk Star Wars with us. So, yeah. Looks like the Obi Wan series is now 1 week away.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite cool, actually. I'm really looking forward to this. It's hard to believe that we're actually only 1 week away from the show, and it's finally here. It seems like we've been talking about it forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those shows that it seems like it's going to be one of those things like you didn't know you really needed it until it's here.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't know I needed this, but I'm glad and I'm probably going to be in that, that bunch. I'll admit already. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think we as fans are just excited to see. I was just talking um, to someone about the whole Luke Skywalker thing at the end of Mandalorian. He's not a Star Wars fan, but he kind of loosely kind of keeps up with it. And he was watching some other show and they were making reference that, the whole Luke Skywalker scene kind of brought a lot of fans back to fandom, because everybody kind of got the chance to see that incredible moment. And so everybody's kind of has the same high hopes for Kenobi because he's such a beloved character. And, this is kind of a big part of the story that we maybe don't get to see in A New Hope. So we're all pretty excited for it. And of course, Vader's returning. We got some Inquisitors. I mean, it seems to be off to a good start, except for the fact that it's only 6 episodes. But
yeah. Well, and it's funny because when you really stop and think about it, we're gonna get 1/3 of the episodes the first night
out the gate.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to worry about the mic, by the way. It sounds like it's your laptop mic tonight. So don't know what happened. I mean, I guess if you can somehow, fix it, that'd be great. But you know what? We're talking about this intriguing young lady tonight, though. This is actually going to be a really strange thing because now this is a character, Reva, who has been in virtually every single one of the trailers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and yet we really don't know a whole lot about her. Of course, we've been sharing, and this show topic was actually your idea. So why don't you kick us off with, what you think you've learned and what you think would be really interesting to discuss? Because I have to admit, every time I saw the trailer, and there's been about 3 or 4 of them now, I think, and she's been in every one, and it's funny because we learn a little bit more about. It's almost like she does a little bit more in each one of the trailers. And so it's really made me see she's a pretty big focal point. So what we're talking about tonight is who exactly is Reva, and what's the deal?
So yeah, Reva obviously is like our kind of. I don't want to call her the main antagonist, but I guess you kind of have to. I mean, I guess Vader and the Empire is kind of overall the main antagonist, but she's kind of spearheading all of this. She's kind of taking the lead, as we've seen in, like you said, in multiple trailers, as the one who's kind of hunting down Kenobi. She wants him bad, and I think she wants Kenobi because she really wants to impress Vader. I think that's her big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are not so into the animation of Star Wars, the Inquisitors are featured heavily in the TV show Star Wars Rebels, and they're kind of like, I guess you would kind of call them like Jedi Knights of the Sith almost, because I don't know if you could call them Padawans per se. They seem a little bit more stronger, more powerful than a Padawan would be,
Yeah, I
but
mean
they're
and
not. I don't.
it's
But they're not like they're not Sith Lord level, which would be like a master almost. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's almost like they
I
have
was just
enough
trying to make
force
that
power
comparison.
to do the job or something, you know? I mean, it's I don't know, it's kind of weird. That's what I kind of hope we get with the acolyte and things like that, you know, is a little bit more explanation because the Jedi side of things is very cut and dry. You know,
Yeah.
you basically have the youngling, and then you go to a Padawan, then you go to a knight, then a master, then a grandmaster. I mean, it's a very linear path that actually makes
Hmm.
sense. But, you know, the problem that I have with the Sith is, first of all, you actually only have the Sith. I mean, I guess from that standpoint, you have a Sith acolyte, which is sort of like a Padawan, and then you have the Sith Lord, which is kind of
Hmm.
like a Jedi Knight, I guess, and then you have the Sith Master or whatever, and they really don't seem to have like you don't have Sith Grandmaster. You know, it's just basically because there's only supposed to be two of those guys, so I guess you don't really have to have too many
Yeah.
distinctions. But beyond within the realm of the Sith, it's like you have all these dark side users that are basically doing the bidding of the Sith. At least the Sith hire them, and it's really
Hmm.
weird to me because you know you have the Inquisitors, you have the Royal Guards, you have oh, like those dudes Grievous was using, you know, and they had like those force pike type things,
Oh
or
yeah.
or vibro blades, or electro
Electric Blades.
staffs, or
Yeah.
you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's actually a whole subclass of weapons that those kind of energy weapons that are mainly used against lightsabers. And the problem is, and that's what I think we're having here, is the fact that you don't really know on the power scale where a lot of these guys fall. Because even within the Inquisitor, you have Inquisitor and Grand Inquisitor, you know? So, I mean,
Hmm.
it's really strange, dark side wise, where these guys actually fall within the power structure, within the hierarchy. It just, I don't know. All these years that I've been a fan, that's never made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Sith hierarchy is its own thing, and that's why, like you said, I'm really anxious to see what Acolyte brings because I think we're going to delve really deep into that, and that's why I'm really just like I've always kind of wanted to know more about that side of things anyway, and this is actually kind of leads into that. So Reva, like you say, is kind of the main antagonist for Kenobi. She's kind of the one that's been featured heavily in the trailer. She's also known as the third sister of the Inquisitors.
Hmm.
So for those of you who are familiar, like I said, with the whole third sister, fifth brother, that's kind of how in the Inquisitor circle, that's kind of like their Darth name, if you will. Now, what's interesting about this particular character, and this is what I was doing some reading on, is that during Order 66, some of the Jedi actually defected to the dark side because they
Hmm.
wanted to live.
Hmm.
So I guess like, in that point in time they kind of gave them the option and Palpatine kind of saw that as like, ooh, okay, I can convert these Jedi into my own little Sith army, I guess, in a way. And that's where the Inquisitors kind of came from, and they report to Vader. So Vader's kind of like oversees the Inquisitors, and he kind of deals with that. And then Palpatine is kind of free to, still run his master manipulation over the whole galaxy. The other thing is that so now we have these Inquisitors. What are their jobs? What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to actually like snuff out and find out anybody who's force sensitive. So it doesn't matter light or dark, really. But more so like younglings, like kids, who may have who may be force sensitive. They're supposed to be captured, and then they're supposed to be taken to like Palpatine's little hidden world to actually be trained to use their force abilities to see the future for him. Like that's kind of their purpose. And then he has other ones, of course, like people who are more seasoned who have not turned to the dark side. They're just supposed to wipe them out. So,
Yeah, well, you know, it makes me wonder sometimes because, and again, this is just the byproduct of a continually developing canon that, you know, they have to do
mhm.
because the franchise is just like decades old at this point. But at first, it's the understanding that all Force users are to be wiped out because
Hmm.
Palpatine doesn't want basically any challenge to his authority or anything like that. And that was the understanding for a long time. And then you started having some of these other Force users that, either it was something like, oh, Vader's training them, or, um, oh, what else did they have? They had a variety of things, excuses basically, as to why they were creating characters, because the fact of the matter is the franchise ages, and as more stories are told, you need to try to bring in some more interesting characters. And so
Hmm.
therefore you have to create these things. But Star Wars, much like some of the other franchises, like say Star Trek really comes to mind at first, and of course, on this show we can never have a show without mentioning Star Trek for some reason. But I think one of the things about it that's somewhat fascinating and frustrating to me, because a lot of the characters they do create are cool. It's just that it's almost like they have to constantly, um, retcon a lot of this stuff, because it went from, like I said, that whole absolute, okay, we're going to wipe out all Force users, no challenge to
Hmm.
the authority or anything. And then it goes to,
Hmm.
well, Vader starts secretly training some guys, like with the whole Force Unleashed thing, right? It kind of goes into
You're
that.
right.
And then, well, okay, then maybe there's, then you get the Inquisitors later on. And then, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I mean, I can hang with things like the Night Sisters and the Dathomir witches and, that kind of thing, because they're sort of outside of the plan. And one of the things that they did right, during the Clone Wars and all that was, and actually it really started with Legends, but it was something that was adopted into the current canon, is that they're dark side users, but they don't have any skin in the game, so to speak. So Palpatine pretty much leaves them alone. Sometimes he'll maybe hire them to do some things or whatever, but for the most part, it's sort of like, okay, if you guys just continue doing your little thing over here, we're
Hmm.
cool. I'm not going to mess with you. But then it goes into this whole, you had like Grievous's guards. You had, you started getting all these people that had some limited force abilities, and it's somewhat, I mean, again, it's helping advance storytelling, I think, but at the same time, they have to be very careful with it, in my opinion, because you're really obviously retconning canon. Now, fortunately, they've done it so slowly over a long period of time that there's entire generations that have grown up just knowing, things like some of the things were introduced in the Clone Wars, and then of course the Inquisitors were the big thing that we saw in Rebels. But
Hmm.
that's why it's going to be really interesting to see how this is handled in Obi-Wan, because the guy that actually plays the Grand Inquisitor never saw an episode of Rebels. That's either a good or a bad thing. It's
True.
like, because on one hand, if Filoni and Favreau, and of course Deborah Chow is the showrunner, and I believe she's the
Hmm.
writer and director of this whole series too. Um,
Hmm.
it's almost like if they have some sort of a vision where they want to expand things a little bit beyond, or maybe do a slight take without necessarily violating what's come before, then I can understand that him not wanting to actually see Rebels before portraying the character, because that way he doesn't have his portrayal colored by something that came before that might be somewhat in contrast with what they want out of him now. On the other hand, I always get a little bit nervous about that, because the Grand Inquisitor character is actually a pretty well established character. I mean, granted, it's not like there's a lot of depth, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know how I feel about that.
Well, like I said, it just depends, and I think it just depends on how he's used as well.
Yeah,
Like I said, with Reva being kind of in the forefront of all this, the Grand Inquisitor may kind of be like the Moff Gideon or something like that, like where
sure,
he
sure.
doesn't really show up until like later on. He's kind of like in the shadows in the background of things. He'll pop up and make his little speeches or whatever, but outside of that, he has everybody else doing.
Well,
his bidding.
it kind of makes you wonder too, because as you brought up at the beginning of the show, there's only 6 episodes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, on one hand, if each of them are an hour long, that'd be like 3 episodes of some of the early Mandalorian episodes. But basically, it's still going to move fairly quickly. Because like I said, I mean, I was kind of joking
Sure.
about it at the beginning of the show, but it's true. I mean, if they're showing the first 2 episodes of this thing next Friday, then that's like a third of the season. I mean,
Right.
that's like 2 out of 6 episodes. So we're going to get a pretty
Hmm.
good chunk. And I think you and I speculated at one point that if they had just done one, it might not have been enough. Like they really want to get you fully into this world. And
Right.
then they're going to start unleashing all the surprises, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the whole Inquisitor thing, yeah, that you brought up, it is a kind of a retcon because, yeah, like you said, originally it's always been okay. They wiped out all of them because, that's why the whole thing was like a new hope was the fact that he was the last of the Jedi and whatever, or the last kind of like
Right?
Force user to kind of pop
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
now
And we find
we
out
got
it's
still because
anything
now we
but.
still got like us. Yeah, because Ahsoka's still running around at post
Right.
Return of the Jedi now. I mean, it's like okay, Grogu's running around. I mean,
There's just yet another
you know,
way that Obi Wan and Yoda totally misled Luke, man, because and once again, I mean, the reality of the whole situation is, look, this is what happens when a franchise,
yeah,
continues
keeps
on
going.
and everything like that, right? Is that there's a couple of absolutes that sometimes, in the name of continuing stories, you have to drop it. But I mean, if you just keep this within the universe, if I were Luke, I'd be a little bit upset. I mean, because you're giving him the
Yeah.
impression that, yes, you are the last of your kind or whatever. And it's like, dude, there's like 100 other of these people running around, And the minute
Yeah.
I'd be like, listen, um, I mean, by the time, after Return of the Jedi hits and he realizes that all these people have been around the whole time, I'd just be like, look, man, wouldn't it have been a better plan to, I don't know, maybe put out a little APB or like a little call out and maybe gotten a bunch of us together to go up against Palpatine? I mean, could I at least have Ahsoka? I mean, I get it. And I know what people are going to say. They're going to be like, no, but the whole point was that Luke had to face Vader and it was like it was the Jedi
Destiny.
trial for him.
Not only that, but it was his destiny. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like the whole thing is about destiny and what's your path, and
Sure, it's a
they
hero's
just
journey.
yeah.
But still, I
But
mean, I'm just saying, once you have the whole story, I guess. once you see some of this
mhm,
stuff, when you're expanding the universe, again, in the current state of where this universe is, it's making less and less sense that
oh yeah,
the whole fate of the galaxy is at stake again. Again, it's like they messed it up the first time. It's like, okay, cool, you had the element of surprise. Maybe come up with a more strategic, or at least more strategically sound plan. That would probably be my advice to Obi-Wan and Yoda. But again, it's fantasy, so you can't, that's another
right,
thing too that a lot of times people will do, right? Because when you do a lot of the sci-fi elements, you say, well, okay, it's fantasy, not sci-fi. And one of the other differences between the two is that sci-fi is all about the micro. It's all about the little details and every little thing. Where fantasy is more macro. It's more about themes and ideas and things like that are conveyed through fantasy elements. And that's where you do have to be careful that you don't overthink this stuff.
right, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you're completely right, and that's what I said. Think this Reva character is going to be really interesting, is because I think that she is maybe a defective uh Jedi because if you think about it, like, and this is something I was reading an article that and it brought this up, is that she's the only one going by her name. Everybody else is
Yeah.
going by a third brother, and so why is she going by her name? So there's something, there's more to her there, and maybe she's conflicted, or maybe Obi-Wan recognizes her and calls her by her actual name and won't call her third sister or whatever. Maybe he's gonna like, no, you're Reva. I know who you are. So that maybe they have some history um, of their own. So I'm really really curious about how of course, like why she's so well. I mean, I kind of figured that she really wants to impress Vader, which also makes me want to see that relationship, like between her and Vader. Is it going to be kind of like how Dooku and Asajj Ventress was? Like that kind of toxic relationship they kind of had with each other.
You know what it could actually be like. I mean, I hate to keep going back to the comics, but to be honest, a lot of the peripheral, like meaty Star Wars stuff, it's not even in the novels anymore. It's really in the comics. I almost wonder if this relationship is going to be very similar to Dr. Aphra and Vader,
Mm.
because they would actually have a very similar, um, I guess the parallels between the goals, right? Because
Hmm.
Vader needed Aphra in order to complete certain missions or whatever, and Aphra kind of needed Vader's backing in order to be able to get into a lot of places and stuff like that. So it was sort of like this mutually beneficial thing. And even though she's an Inquisitor at this point, and there's a little bit more of a subordinate thing more than a unequal partnership, it's still kind of that same vibe that I think you could end up seeing a very similar dynamic between the characters.
Yeah, I mean, because even in the trailer, she says, "You can't run. You can't keep running from him." You know, um, and she, of course, she's yelling at Kenobi, and she's got to be talking about Vader, and she's kind of like, okay, I want every bounty hunter, I want everybody to find. Like, she's really gunning for Kenobi, and so she really wants him bad because she knows how bad Vader wants him, and
Wouldn't it be
so
funny though? Wouldn't it be hilarious if this is just another clever editing trick and maybe she isn't talking about Vader
yeah. But then, I mean, the only person I could think of would probably maybe the Grand Inquisitor.
or
Like, who else
Palpatine?
would? Yeah, but Palpatine really aren't dealing with the Inquisitor. That's kind of Vader's thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I'm look, 95%. I'm sure that, she's talking about Vader. But hey,
yeah, but
we have sworn up and down. I mean, I'm not going to use Rogue One. That's a bad example because like 90% of the trailer wasn't even in the movie. But
hmm
it's kind of like that. Well, you know what? The Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi, both of those were really good examples because, especially The Last Jedi, because it was something that Luke was saying, and the
oh, it's
way the
time for the Jedi to
trailer,
end.
yeah, was sort of like the way well, there was that, but there was a way that the trailer was edited. It was almost like Luke was referring to somebody different than what he actually was when you saw the movie. So it really isn't beyond the realm of possibility that the same kind of trickery is being used. However, given the context, it probably is. But here's a question too that kind of goes along with, all the stuff that you're saying. And I'm sure that it would be on anybody's mind too. And I'm sure people have been wondering this, but you got to wonder like how much of this series will Reva be in?
Oh, I think she's gonna play pretty much heavily all the way up until the end. I think she's going to be because, like I said, I think there's more. I mean, of course, we don't know anything about her story really at this point, but I really feel like she has a somewhat in depth story. Like, I feel like she might have been one of those Jedi that decided to, hey, self preservation. I'm going to join the winning team. I'm going
Hmm.
to join the Empire, and you know, that means I can stay around and be alive for a while, and I can work, under basically Anakin. And that's another thing too. Like, I wonder, does she know if he's Anakin? I mean, that's like there's a lot I want to kind of really delve into this character with, but to your point, I think she's going to be a big part of this until maybe the very end. I think she's going to maybe get to the very end. Maybe Obi Wan cuts her down, and then it's between him and Vader now.
Well, and I won't actually remind people, but the last time that we were on, we did reveal a little bit of a rumored spoiler that could have to do with her as far as her story arc goes. And so if that rumor is actually true, then I would say she does play a big part, because basically the conclusion of her story arc being rumored as it is, she would almost have to play a big role in order for that rumored story arc to be impactful.
Right. Yeah.
That was kind of me trying to talk around the
Good job, by the way.
this is I'm trying to be careful, because again, I mean, I was actually torn. And again, if you guys are curious, if you go back to, it was probably like the last Obi-Wan theme. Well, then again, I think actually both of our last two shows. I don't remember. I think it was the last Friday show that we did that I think we talked about it. But yeah, we talked about a rumored, actually it was Ronaldo who, put it out there, and I decided to put it out there. Yeah, go ahead and do it, because again, it's one of those things where this is a Star Wars show. We like to discuss the rumors. We like to discuss everything. And I mean, as I said on that show, I wouldn't have put it out there if this had been some confirmed thing. But, it's a rumor. I mean, it could be true, but, we don't know. It was kind of like the Han Solo death thing. That was rumored long before the last, Force Awakens came out. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it quite a bit. Now, technically, that ended up being a spoiler, because that's what happened, but at the time it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of something like that. So I think you're right. I think that she does actually play a fairly large role in this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really weird to see this might be the first live action Star Wars movie, or not movie, but series where we actually have a female antagonist.
Yeah, I mean, there were
as a lead. I mean,
lead, yeah. So not like a henchman or something, but
right, yeah. But like in a live action, like we haven't seen anyone who was like the lead person as an antagonist.
Well, and I mean, I don't know if I would, because I would say Vader and the Grand Inquisitor would be more the leads.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Vader and in action, like in the sense of he's going to be like in every episode. But Reva's going to play heavily, I think, in pretty much every episode, because she's the one like kind of like leading the search. So we've seen thus far.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, one of the things that's been very intriguing to me is the fact that she has been featured fairly prominently in each one of the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does, it does make you think like, okay, she's going to be pretty much, and again, when you factor in the rumored ending to her story arc, at least in the series, yeah, it almost has to play out to where she's, fairly important anyway to the story.
Now, I think you said something to the effect of the lightsaber duels are going to be more prequel era versus sequel or original trilogy style.
Well,
which is cool.
Struggle to even call any of those duels. I mean, I guess the Luke Kylo one kind of. The Rey the Rey Kylo, especially the one in Rise of Skywalker, that was a full blown thing. But it was
the one with the Praetorian Guards.
Yeah, that was actually, in fact, if I had to pick a best duel from the sequel trilogy, that would probably be it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Kylo and Rey versus the Praetorian Guards, that definitely was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And the choreography in that was really cool, too. But, yeah. There's a couple of different things that they've been saying. So the lightsaber duels are going to be a little bit more prequel era than original trilogy or sequel era. And then Deborah Chow had alluded to the fact that Vader he's not quite a New Hope Vader yet. You know,
Mm.
he's still growing into his position, sort of. Like he's Vader, but he's not quite the established, you know, guy.
Polished.
Yeah, yeah, that we see starting in A New Hope and forward. And I would probably say
Mm.
that would include Rogue One too, considering Rogue One was probably like 2 weeks before, or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I mean, it rolls right into A New Hope. So, sort of that Vader that we see in Rogue One, which is important because Vader actually had speaking lines in that one. It wasn't like you just saw him in that really cool ending. I mean, he dealt all along, and he's definitely who he is, by then. So it's really going to be interesting in a way too, because we're going to see a little bit of I don't know if I want to really use the word unpolished, but definitely still has that Anakin trying to grow into his Vaderness. And that's,
Well,
what? That's probably why they got Hayden Christensen to play him.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. But the other thing I'm wondering is because of that, and it just dawned on me, like, okay, well, if it's before Rogue One, right? So we saw how Vader was just like mowing down all those, rebels in that little corridor. As far as his lightsaber skills, his, ability with the Force and everything like that. I wonder how skilled he's going to be in this particular outing. Like, is he
Well,
still? Because I mean, he was still formidable as Anakin Skywalker, of course, as we saw in Revenge of the Sith. I mean, he was
right.
holding his
And
own for the most part, but he was still human.
yeah, but the
So
whole
then now
idea
it's like,
is, yeah, he's like, it's sort of like he's trying to get used to fighting in the suit. I mean, that was a big thing even in the last few books of Legends, which would include Rise of Darth Vader, I think it was called. That actually dealt with it really heavily. I almost wish they had canonized that novel, to be honest. But that was the big one where, he almost got killed by a Padawan
mm-hmm,
in a duel when he first had the suit and he was going after people in Order 66. And that's when, and that was kind of embarrassing to him, obviously. He went back and he modified the suit even more to what we're used to, and sort of trained a little bit differently, and then he became, just like crazy powerful again, kind of like what we see now. But they did deal with that a little bit though in Lords of the Sith, which is a canon novel,
mm-hmm.
and they seem to have alluded to that in the article, because the other thing too, and I know you were probably going back and forth as well as I was. Do we make this show? And I think we decided that's what we're going to do Monday, right? Is the whole Vanity Fair thing that came out that has just like piles of information. Because at first it was just going to be about Andor, but that's just one of the things that was revealed in this thing. I mean, this Vanity Fair article that came out, I think this week actually, just has just a crazy amount of updates about everything you can imagine. So I think that we said that was, stay tuned, obviously, but that seemed to be the plan. And one of the things that came out in that was this whole Vader discussion, where, again, she said, well, he's not quite the Vader that he is in A New Hope, but he is Vader, though.
On his way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because he is 10 years removed. Because the Lords of the Sith, the part that deals with the clunkiness of his suit, and same thing with Darth Vader Rising, this is all like right after Revenge of the Sith. I mean, probably more like the Bad Batch timeline than anything else. Whereas, Obi-Wan takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith and only 9 years before A New Hope. So I think it's pretty accurate. Like you said, he's well on his way. He's almost there, but, not quite. Just a few more seconds. But it is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see how they actually utilize Vader, how they play his character. I mean, of course, we know he has the battle with Obi Wan, so I'm really curious. And it would be weird to see if they keep it in the style of the lightsaber duels in the style of the prequels, it'd be weird to see a Vader like that. You know what I mean? Like flipping around, spinning, and do. I mean, that would be kind of. It would be cool. It would just be weird because we're so used to his more finesse style or his pure
Well,
brutality. But to
again,
see,
I have to say that for those of us in the comic book, video game, even novel world, kind of used to it.
well, no, I mean, I'm saying like seeing it though. We haven't seen it. That's my point. Like we've only seen him
Well,
actually.
if you're talking about like in a live action
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
setting,
Like we've only seen.
well,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
there was that fan made Obi-Wan. Remember when they redid the episode 4 duel?
yeah,
That we were looking at it going like, oh man, maybe it is time to remake episode 4, right? If they that
if they do it like that,
if they did it like that, I think I'd be happy because Vader was definitely extremely agile, but it wasn't like he was, flipping around and doing all kinds of crazy stuff,
hmm
you
he wasn't
know,
like Maul or anything.
or even Palpatine. Don't forget that little
Oh
corkscrew
yeah,
move that Palpatine. I mean, that
yeah,
was like, whoa, that almost doesn't seem possible.
not right.
But, the dark side of the Force does, what's the line? Something,
It's a gateway to
yes,
ability something to be
be
unnatural.
unnatural. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, little horizontal corkscrew thrust, I guess would probably be in that whole category somewhere.
Yeah, and also like just to, I was perusing a little bit into the article about um, Kenobi. So this whole thing, how even Reva kind of comes into play, is apparently, when Reva's kind of like, okay, she's hunting for Kenobi, she sends out, all these bounty hunters or whatever.
Hmm.
Apparently, one of our favorites, Black Crescent, happens to be there and spots Obi-Wan, and they have this duel and Obi-Wan's been trying to stay low key, but at this point, going against Black Crescent, he actually had to draw his lightsaber, and that's when everybody was just like, "Uh-oh, there's actually a Jedi here," and then
So
he had to kind of go.
is that something we're supposedly going to see?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
So,
apparently, this is actually like the story, like it's a rumored story, plot point.
well, it
But
would make sense.
that's what draws them to Tatooine in the first place,
Okay, I could
was
see
because
that.
they heard that there was, like okay, Crescent was looking for him. He gets into some altercation with Obi Wan. Obi Wan had no choice but to draw his lightsaber, and then that's when everybody's like, "Oh crap, a Jedi!" So then, of course, word starts spreading quickly that there's a Jedi running around on Tatooine. Vader dispatches the Inquisitors to go to Tatooine, but of course, they're looking for him. But in the process of looking for him, he's like, "Well, I got to get out of here to draw them away from Luke, because if
Right.
they sense Luke here, this all will be for naught." So he kind of had to kind of orchestrate this whole plan to kind of draw them away, and that's how he probably ended up at the Hong Kong planet.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I mean,
So
we know that that's definitely how he's gonna, when he goes off world, that's where he's gonna go. But my thing is,
right,
you got to wonder if that plays into, because remember, there's a bunch of different rumors like that. There was a rumor that there was some Leia kidnapping plot or something that he had to go,
hmm
and he figured, well, okay, things are heating up a little, no pun intended, on Tatooine, so, and now Leia's been kidnapped, so this would be a good time for me to maybe go off world and deal with this. And who knows? They could actually be intertwined, because the way that I could see that happening
hmm
would be is if Bale says, somehow gets word to Obi-Wan, is like Leia's been kidnapped or whatever. Obi-Wan would be a little bit hesitant to actually go and risk being, seen or whatever. But what could maybe motivate him to take the job would be that, okay, he's been discovered on Tatooine. Maybe he feels it's better to get off planet for a while and let things cool off a little bit.
hmm
So it's almost like, okay, rather than send somebody else, which would be his first instinct to tell them to do, he could say something like, okay, look, fine, I'll rescue Leia, and I'll do that. The other reason why I think that would make sense, by the way, I didn't mention this the last time because I had time to think about that when we talked about it. It really would make sense if this actually is true, because if Obi-Wan's the one that's sent to rescue Leia, that would explain in part why she's so familiar with him for episode 4. You know, why send the message to Obi Wan Kenobi? Because remember, a lot of people have answered that by saying, well, the Tantive 4 was above Tatooine. And I was like, yes, but remember, she was actually going there to find Obi-Wan. She just put the message in R2 because she knew she wasn't going to be able to do it herself, so she just dispatched them. But the whole point was to go find Obi-Wan and basically bring it to his attention. And so, obviously, Obi-Wan was probably a family friend or something, but I also think that if she had a personal experience with him, like being rescued by him or something like that, that would actually, I think, really inform the whole episode 4 thing.
Well, I could kind of see that if it wasn't for the fact of how she introduced herself.
Yes, I know. Years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars, and now I thought of that too. But again, if they can retcon the whole Obi-Wan duel thing, this really isn't that much of a stretch.
And then, I think when Luke came to rescue Leia on the Death Star, he's like, yeah, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. And she's like, Ben Kenobi? Like, how does she know him as Ben?
Exactly. See, it's little things like that. Because you're right. In the message, she refers to him as Obi-Wan.
As Obi Wan Kenobi.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Now, the reality is, it was probably some slip of the script. To be honest, I think that's really what it was. Cause,
oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There's some of the things that, you just have to overlook, basically. But it could be true. Sometimes we as fans
that could be
tend
just
to give...
a way that... Well, I was just going to say, like, maybe that's a way to let people know, like, I really know. Like, okay, let's just say, for example, you, right? Let's just say a lot of people named Eric go by the name Rick. So a lot of people might just, let's say you went by that name all the time, like Rick in Vansel, whatever. But if someone says, oh no, Eric, like, oh, you know me, because only my real close friends call me Eric. Everybody else calls me Rick. You know what I mean? So it could be one of those type of situations where, like, okay, for you to know my actual name, you might, okay, right. I'm going to listen to you.
It's like Obi Wan Kenobi. Well, that's a name I haven't heard since I just saw this message. Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing, too. I really hope that, they canonized the whole Ben Kenobi thing, I think, in one of the comics, about how he got the thing because it was some nickname or something that Satine gave him. I think it was. I think that's how they basically, and to honor her, he went by the name Ben or something. It was something like that. I don't remember the exact details. But it does make me wonder, though, because, and this is something that we had talked about before, they had these really fascinating conversations in the trailer between him and Owen Lars. And I'm totally looking forward to that, because obviously we're going to get the background and the context about why Obi-Wan wasn't exactly Owen's favorite person. They were cool in episode 2. He was probably a little, okay, I'm going to take care of this kid, but I'm not really appreciating you just dropping this kid off to me type of thing. But by the time episode 4 comes around, Owen clearly doesn't want Luke to have anything to do with him. And Owen doesn't seem to really want to have a lot to do with him either. So it's going to be interesting to see how that relationship breaks down due to what becomes like a sort of a differentiating or a differing ideal, and I think that's the whole Ben thing. I really, same thing. I hope when he goes from being Obi-Wan to Ben Kenobi, I hope that's addressed in this show too.
Yeah, but I think Owen's whole deal was the fact that, like, I mean, of course, he's kind of like, all right, I I saw what the Jedi can become, like as far as Anakin becoming Vader. So he's probably like, of course, if we're holding on to his kid, like, I just don't want to let him go in and puts the galaxy even more peril. But so I think his whole thing, his grouchy attitude towards the whole thing, he was just trying to keep Luke away from. That's why he didn't want him to join. He's like, well, you can join the Academy next year because once again, that just puts you closer to Vader. The fact that you're joining the Imperial Academy, I
I
mean,
wonder
you're right.
that. I wonder that all the time because my whole thing is like, okay, dude, you're concerned about him dealing with Obi-Wan too much, but you're gonna let him go to the Academy? I mean, that almost
Well, I think that's why
certainly.
yeah, I think he just kept trying to hold him. I think he just kept trying to give him it. Oh, you could join the Academy next year. He said, but he said, well, all my friends have gone, and he's like, yeah, I know, but just I need you here. So I think he's trying to play that guilt trip so Luke won't go because he knows, okay, if he goes there and if he's anything like his father, well, he's going to stand out. And of course, with the name Skywalker, the
Yeah,
moment you
it'd be kind
register,
of
I
like.
mean,
I mean, I'm sorry, but like
yeah.
step one is, you probably should fix that first. I mean,
Like,
maybe
I'm
let's,
sorry.
uh,
Like Cadet Skywalker did excellent on his test today. Cadet who? It's just like,
right, right,
just instantly, and it's like, oh, he's a fabulous pilot. Yeah, let me meet him. Exactly. I mean,
exactly.
so I think that's the reason why Owen was kind of like so, and I think he knew if he hooked up with Obi-Wan, that's why he said, I'm afraid he was gonna follow you on some damn fool old mission, like because he's like, all right, this is what you every time you
Well,
come around, like you got
and
some
that's
mission
it.
that you're going on, and
Right, and that's the thing is that I think that it's almost a mixed bag because if he goes with Obi-Wan, okay, now he's going to learn the way of the Jedi, and I'm sure Owen's thinking, I saw how successful you were at training Anakin.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe you ought to start training Sith. You seem to be a lot better at that.
Yeah, where's the little green guy?
But
Maybe he's
yeah,
better at it.
exactly. But I mean, on the other hand, though, it's true. If he lets Luke just go to the academy, and that's why I think Owen was just trying to get Luke to be a farmer. And of course, that's when Beru's like, he's just not a farmer, Owen. He's got too much of his father in him. And he's like, that's what I'm afraid of. And so,
Mm-hmm.
again, these lines are, I can't say they didn't make sense because we knew what they were talking about. But the more that you're filling in all of this backstory, it enriches these lines ridiculously. I mean, you really feel now. I mean, I have a feeling that much the same way when we watched Rogue One and just watched episode 4 right after it, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, man, this really gives A New Hope a whole different kind of vibe. And I think that,
Context. Yeah.
yeah, and I think, and context is a great word because I think that that's what you're going to really see with Obi-Wan. I think
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan's going to give A New Hope a ton of additional context that we didn't have before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Because I think, like I said, this whole, I know we kind of divulged away from Reva a bit, but
a
that's what I'm
little
saying. I
bit.
think but I think that's why she's such an integral part in the stories because she's putting the pressure on trying to find Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan knows it's like if Obi-Wan knows her, meaning that if she was once a Jedi Padawan or a Jedi Knight, and now she's defected over to the Empire, and she's serving as an Inquisitor for them. Um, One, I can see that's why maybe she might go by the name Reva, or maybe she's still struggling. Like maybe she is one of those
Eh,
Kylo,
well,
Anakin moments where she's struggling. Like, okay, I'm trying to be dark, but I really have too much good in me, and I'm trying to deal with that. And that's so we don't know if we're going to see that in in the series
well, I
too.
would I would agree with you. I actually think that when we see more of her backstory, that yeah, we're gonna find out that she was a Jedi Knight at one point, and that she did defect. And I think you're right. I think it's gonna be somewhat of one of those. okay, I'm trying to be dark. Like you said, Kylo Ren moments. One of the things that I thought was the most brilliant thing about the sequel trilogy, actually, was they spun the whole thing around. You have a dark side guy being tempted by the light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, I mean, I think that that's one of the biggest reasons, too, why people really reacted negatively to the sequel trilogy. It's not just what was there, it's also these themes that they started to explore and they either executed poorly or they just didn't go far enough. It's like, oh, what it could have been if you
Mm-hmm.
guys had just handled this differently and, oh, I don't know, plan things out. But I think that now they have a chance to do that. And so maybe you can take this whole, I'm trying to go to the dark side, because again, at this point in time, oh, I'm sure halfway through, people are starting to get an idea that the Empire is a little bit more authoritarian and totalitarian than the Republic was. But I'm sure there's still a lot of people who thought that by serving the Empire, they're on the right side. That the rebels are terrorists trying to disrupt order and cause chaos, and the Empire is trying to bring peace, prosperity, and order to the galaxy. And so you might have somebody like Reva, if she was a Jedi, who might have been kind of like Anakin, you know? Maybe the Jedi weren't 100% right about things. Maybe they were right within themselves, but maybe they were serving the wrong side with all the corruption and everything that we saw in the Senate. And so maybe because of that, she feels justified in defecting and going to the dark side. And of course, it could be as simple as self-preservation too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, okay, it's either die or serve them. Okay, what is thy bidding, my master? You know,
Right, exactly.
So you're the new Yoda. I get it. Okay, cool. Let's do this. You know, I mean,
do I get a Darth name? How does this
yeah,
work?
right,
You know?
exactly. Like, is there some sort of a welcome package on this thing, or you know, do I get my red lightsaber? And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's
ID
one of.
badge and let me onto the Death Star. That'd be hilarious. You just see like cling, just
Oh man,
opens up all the little
yes.
doors.
It's like, oh man, my access badge doesn't open this door. Oh, get Fred. Fred can let you in. He's got, you know, it's like
She just uses the Force instead. Like, you know what? I got it. Don't worry about it.
either that or it's like
But
Finn back when he was a custodian.
right. But
But it will
but
be
yeah, man.
interesting to
I think
explore these themes, though, you know?
yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think Reva, like I said, it's going to pose an interesting character because much like Rey, was different because we've never seen I mean, outside of Ahsoka, but like in a live action situation, once again, we haven't seen a female Jedi kind of just be the lead. And so in this case, we're getting to see um, Reva as the antagonist be the lead. And so I think that brings up new things because of the different emotional things that you can spin on that, because it allows for that space, because women just naturally being more emotional. Maybe there were some traumatic things that happened. Maybe there's a lot of things that you can really, pull from there. So I'm really curious as to see how her relationship honestly is with Vader. I'm really curious to see her relationship with Obi-Wan. Because, of course, Obi-Wan's probably going to have some sort of conflict with her where he's going to talk to her and they're going to kind of argue back and forth ideology and stuff like, well, why are you on this side? And, what I mean?
Yeah, very similar to
Um,
the way Anakin and Obi-Wan were sort of debating before their lightsaber duel.
Exactly, because Obi Wan was always known as the negotiator. He was always one that was trying to reason with people, and he even did it with Asajj Ventress and so many other characters. So I think that that's what's really going to be really interesting about this, and I think Reva's going to be caught between a rock and a hard place sometimes because her mind and her heart might be pulling her in two different directions,
Mm-hmm.
and she's going to have to choose one. And
Yeah.
this we don't know. Obviously, I don't think she's going to make the right choice. But and I also want to see too if in the Obi Wan series, are they going to disband with the Inquisitors? Because are we going to see the end of the Inquisitors completely at the end of this? Like, are they going to be like that
No.
program going to be shut down?
Nope.
Because why weren't they around in the original trilogy?
Well, by then they were shut down. But you got to remember, the Rebels takes
Well,
place
they're
after
still.
Obi-Wan.
That's right.
Yeah, Rebels is where
Yeah,
we're introduced to them, and
that's right.
Rebels takes place after Obi-Wan. So, yeah, they're not
Right,
shutting down
right, right.
squat.
Yeah, that's right. I keep getting because I keep thinking
I
Maul
know.
is already dead, but he's not. Okay,
Mm-mm. No, and I mean,
right.
there have been rumors that way too, because we know that Solo obviously is never going to be made into a movie. In fact, that was one of the reasons why Kathleen Kennedy in the Vanity Fair article, we'll cover that probably Monday, but she had revealed that there were going to be no more Solo movies and no more standalone films, actually. And she also made the big thing about, having to move away from, um, the Skywalker saga, and talking about how Ryan Johnson's trilogy is still there, but it's just on hold for now.
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of stuff. Like I said, that's kind of a preview for Monday's show, by the way. And hey, while I'm at it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and help the channel out, because we love to bring this stuff to you guys all the time. But yeah, I was going to say the same thing as you, essentially, because the question obviously is, all right, we explored who Reva was. What kinds of things would we like to see? And you pointed out you'd like to see a relationship with Vader, with Obi-Wan, basically how she's going to fit into the whole storyline itself. What is really her motivation and her mindset? And these are all things that I think that I too would like to see as well. What's going to make her different? Because I do think that she's going to be more of a pivotal character in this thing than, say, the Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor is going to be pretty much rooted in who and what he is.
Hmm.
And, of course, the other thing, which relates to that, is, as our show attested to, I don't know, last fall or something, but there's like a gang of cast members we still know nothing about.
Right.
The week before, by the way, this thing's premiering, there's like, 8 or 9 or 10 or something cast members to this thing. So I'm more than mildly curious on where they fit in, because, again, this is like a 6-episode series. It's not like a 12 or 20 or... I mean, even The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett got like 8 or 10 episodes.
Yeah, I was about to say it's not even 10 episodes. That's usually
No.
the standard
Yeah,
for a series.
sure. For these live action things. I mean, we're starting to see some
Some
ground rules
12s here.
established now. Yeah, it's like... I mean, an 8-episode series, which I think... Was it the Book of Boba Fett that was 8 episodes, or was that 10?
Yes, 8.
Yeah, and I remember we were saying that was a little short, that actually should have gone on for 12. And I really
Yeah,
hope
because
that we don't...
Mandalorian was like 10,
10.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it always was, and that's the thing. I think 10 episodes is more the sweet spot to this. But then again, you could look at it another way, because even though it was 10 episodes, a lot of those
Yeah,
episodes were
filler.
like 22 minutes. I think one of them was
And they're filler.
17. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, but again, it's kind of like, if you have 6 1-hour episodes, that's actually a little bit more than 10 half-hour episodes. Because you have 6 hours of one, 5 hours of the other.
Hmm.
Now, to be fair, with The Mandalorian, some of the episodes were like 45, 50 minutes. Other ones were like 20. But, so I'm sure it all worked out to be roughly 6, but still, Obi-Wan's going to have a lot of work to do. And Reva being the key to that, I think, is definitely going to give us a little bit. I think that she's going to be, in some ways, the heart and soul of the show, as far as, do we see her fall deeper into the dark? Does she have another redemption story type of thing? What's her relationship like with all these different characters? Because I think she's going to be the common thread, right? Because we know Obi-Wan and Vader face off. We know that Obi-Wan probably meets the Grand Inquisitor at one point. But to me, it seems like Reva's going to be the one who's actually interacting with everybody at some point. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like seeing the whole show through her eyes, maybe. Again, that remains to be seen. And of course, a week from Monday, we'll be bringing the first review of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we'll try to do in order to keep up, because with the review shows, I don't like to get behind. So if for some reason we can't do them live, we'll definitely try to pre-record them and then put them in the normal Monday time slot. So, and if worse comes to worse and we have to dedicate a Friday show to it, we'll do it. But the point is, we will get these reviews out. There is going to be a playlist for the Obi Wan related content. And so, again, be sure to check us out. We stream every Monday and Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And Mondays are usually reviews and character studies and all kinds of different topics. And then Friday is more the news-based, current events type shows or whatever. Because we also, in addition to a week from today being the debut of Obi Wan, this coming Wednesday, I think, is the start of Star Wars Celebration.
Yep.
So Friday, if I may be so bold, we'll probably cover that because, again, we don't really want to... I mean, I'm sure we'll say whether or not we liked Obi-Wan or what we thought, but we'll save that for our actual review show. So next Friday's show, I can almost guarantee it's just going to be about... I mean, it's going to be about Celebration. We're going to do some Celebration coverage. So check us out Monday night at 8, where we'll be talking about this Vanity Fair article. And then, of course, next Friday, we're going to be doing the Celebration coverage. And then that following Monday, we got the Obi-Wan review. So there's a lot of good content coming up. So again, hit that like button to help our channel, help it grow, help us put the videos in front of more people. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss all this great content. And hey, even hit that notification bell so you know exactly when we're going live. Although, like I said, every Monday, every Friday at 8. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with this Obi-Wan thing, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, with that, we will see you guys Monday night at 8. As always, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.